Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agnanatimidandasya Gnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namini. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarini. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Welcome all to our Saturday satsang. So last week we had completed verse up to verse 6 of chapter 4. Today we will continue further. So today is the most famous verses of Bhagavad Gita. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bharata abhyuttanam adharmasya tadatmanam sujamyaham. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. So let's see what Prabhupada is writing in his purport. The word Srijami is significant herein. Srijami cannot be used in the sense of creation, because according to the previous verse, there is no creation of the Lord's form or body, since all of the forms are eternally existent. So last verse was Ajopi san navyayatma bhutanam ishwaropi san prakritim swam adhisthaya sambhavami atma maya. So in this Krishna is saying, I am unborn, and my transcendental body never deteriorates. I still appear in every millennium in my own original transcendental form. Sambhavami atma maya. Atma maya means by my internal energy. By my internal energy. So here Srujamyaham, tadatmanam srujamyaham. Srujati, generally sruj means creation. But in this verse, we cannot understand Srujami as created. It just means it is manifested. Now, what does manifest mean? Manifest means the Lord is omnipresent. The Lord just makes himself visible. So when the Lord makes himself visible, it is called manifestation. And when he makes himself invisible, or he is no longer seen by people, then he is unmanifest. So that is why for Krishna, there is no question of birth and death or creation and destruction. These are all concepts applicable only to material objects. Krishna is saying Atma Maya, Sambhavami Atma Maya. Atma Maya means Krishna's body and Krishna's soul are non-different. They are all spiritual. But in this material world, the body is material, the soul is spiritual. So for the body, there is creation, destruction, or there is birth, death. But for the spirit, there is no birth, there is no death. That we learnt even in the second chapter. When Krishna was talking about Atma Gnana, he described how the soul is unborn. Soul is unborn because it is part and parcel of the supreme whole, the supreme soul, Krishna. Because he is unborn, he is eternal. As minute souls, Anu-Atma, we are also eternal. We are also unborn. So he is eternal. He is always existing. He just manifests himself. So when does he manifest himself? So the Lord has a specific schedule. So here he's saying, Prabhupada is saying, although the Lord appears on schedule, namely at the end of the Dwapar Yuga of the 28th millennium of the 7th Manu. 7th Manu is called Vaivasvata Manu. So he appears in Dwapar Yuga of the 28th millennium. So 28th Yuga, 28th Dwapar Yuga of Vaivasvata Manu, who is the 7th Manu. So in one day of Brahma, there are 14 Manus. Each Manu lives to, he exists up to 71 Chaturyugas. One Chaturyuga is Treta Yuga, Satyuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara and Kali. So in Manu's 28th Dwapar Yuga, 28th millennium, Dwapar Yuga of the 28th millennium, Krishna appears. That is his schedule. And this happens in one day of Brahma. So one day of Brahma, Krishna appears once only in a particular material universe. And generally when Krishna appears in Dwapar Yuga, the subsequent Kali Yuga, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears, who is not different from Krishna. Why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears? Because Krishna in Bhagavad Gita said, Man mana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. And he says, Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam sharanam raja. So he said, become my devotee. Surrender yourself to me. Then Krishna thinks, how do people surrender? They don't know how to surrender. They don't know how to become my devotee. How can I teach them? I can teach them if I only appear as a devotee and show them the practice, the way of becoming a devotee. Of course, that is the external reason why Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears. Many reasons. But that is also one of the reasons. So when Krishna appears in the 28th millennium Dwapar Yuga, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears in the same millennium Kali Yuga. So we are so fortunate that we have actually appeared in the same Kali Yuga that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. And the previous Dwapar Yuga, Krishna had appeared. Now please understand, this happens only once in a day of Brahma. In one day of Brahma, there are 14 Manus and 71 Chaturyugas. Of all that, only once he appears, and in that Chaturyuga, fortunately, all of us are here present in this material world in the human form of life. Previously, we might have also been there, but maybe not in human form of life, or maybe, we don't know. But now that Krishna appeared, came and gave Bhagavad Gita. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, came and gave the chanting of the Hare Krishna. This is the most opportune time for jivas to become Krishna conscious and go back to the spiritual world. There can't be any more opportune moment in the whole creation in one day of Brahma. Because Prabhupada is saying he has no obligation to adhere to such rules and regulations because he is completely free to act in many ways at his will. So there is no restriction that Krishna has to appear like this only and like that. Now another thing. Now, actually we'll discuss that in the next verse. So he therefore appears by his own will whenever there is a predominance of irreligiosity and a disappearance of true religion. Now we'll discuss about true religion. In the next verse, we'll discuss about what is his intent. Why does he appear? So here he is saying, Yada hi dharmasya glani. So we have to understand what is dharma. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. Dharma, religious principles. Religious principles are given by Krishna himself. Now we can understand dharma at different levels. For those in the conditioned state means most of people outside who are not devotees of Krishna, not most, all of them are conditioned. And even amongst devotees, many are conditioned and only few are liberated. So for mostly conditioned people, conditioned means we are under the control of the three modes of material nature, Sattva-guna, Rajoguna, Tamoguna. Who is under the control of these three modes, they're called conditioned. For a conditioned soul, the dharma is Varnashrama. It is called Varnashrama Dharma. And for Matajis, it is called Stri Dharma. Varnashrama Dharma means there are 4 Varnas and 4 Ashramas. So there is Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. And then there is Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyas. So this is very important. This was made by the Lord based on Guna and Karma, which means a person has to adopt a certain vritti or occupation based on his Varna. He can be Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. This is not a caste system as modern India made it to become. It is a classification of people based on their ability or competency to work and their quality or nature. So Brahmana is one who is inclined towards knowledge seeking. And what type of knowledge? Brahman janati iti Brahmana. Not that other classifications, other orders, not that they don't have inclination to knowledge. They have. But specifically, Brahmana is inclined towards Brahmagnan, knowledge of Brahman. So Brahmana knows, Brahmana is able to read Shastra, is able to read Vedas. Now, for somebody to be able to read Vedas, one has to be very pure. One has to have no Sanskrit, should have studied, logic, Vyakarana, all these things for many years. So generally, in previous ages, Brahmana and Kshatriyas both used to go through the Brahmacharya school. They used to go to school, right, which is called Brahmacharya, where students reside in the house of the Guru and serve him and learn from him. And when they learn all these things and they have ability to read Shastra. So that way Kshatriyas are also, they're not illiterates, they're also literates, but their knowledge is more focused towards administration, politics, negotiations, war, fighting, these kind of things. Brahmana's knowledge is more towards knowing Brahman. So he should know, who am I, who is Brahman, who is Parabrahman, what is my relationship with him. And the role of a Brahmana is that not that he will just know that and keep quiet. He has to distribute that message to others. So those who are inclined to acquiring Shastric knowledge on these lines were considered Brahmanas. Those who are inclined to administration, politics, fighting war, protection, they are Kshatriyas. Those who are inclined to do business, cow protection, agriculture, they're all called Vaishyas. And then there are Shudras who are not necessarily specialists in any of these three. They help all these three Vargas to fulfill their work. Of course, in Kali Yuga, this so-called computer knowledge, this computer knowledge is supposed to belong to Shudras. Actually, and to Asuras. Technology belongs to Asuras. So there's one demon called by name Maya Danava. He's a technologist. And throughout history, we can see he has done so many inventions, creations of his, which are all technological creations, just like modern, scientists, etc. They're doing technology, and so many people. And I was involved in this computer, which is actually knowledge of Shudras. And so Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. And then there is Brahmacharya, which was mainly for boys. Girls used to get trained at home by mothers and other elders. Then Grihastha. So those boys who finish their studies and then decide to get married, then they'll marry at the right age, which is actually previously marriage used to happen earlier for the simple reason that there's no question of love marriage and all this, right? So when children were young, matches used to be decided, and they used to be decided not whimsically, right, based on horoscope. And why horoscope? Because the gunas have to be matched again. These gunas have to be matched so that there are compatible, couple is compatible, right? That their gunas are in line, are aligned, and they're not opposite poles, which unfortunately happens most of the times in Kali Yuga because we don't look at horoscope before marriage. Of course, then there's to start Grihastha Ashrama around the age of 25 and conclude the Grihastha Ashrama by the age of 50. And then at the age of 50, then they have to enter Vanaprastha. Vanaprastha means by the time basically all our material responsibilities are over, which is if you have children, then getting them married, whatever other kind of social responsibilities that we have, all that is over by the age of 50. And then people are constantly engaged in the service of the Lord in Vanaprastha. And eventually, men could take sannyas, which is complete renunciation from social life. Now, this dharma, this Varnashrama dharma was very important because it used to take people towards the ultimate goal of life. Life was not understood to be just for, earn money, make merry, enjoy. Being happy is actually part of material. I mean, it is expected because we are all Satchidananda, we are part of Satchidananda Krishna. So we are also have that need for happiness, and we can fulfill that happiness in material life as well, but in a regulated way as prescribed in the Shastra. And that is also available only for Grihasthas. A brahmachari has no concept of happiness. His happiness is to serve his guru. Vanaprastha, their happiness is in paricharya, I am doing bhakti. And similarly for sannyas. So only grihastha, some kind of sense gratification license is only there for grihasthas. But it is also dharmic, not like in Kali Yuga right now. It is completely adharmic. No sense of right or wrong. So these principles of religion are laid down in the Shastra. So Krishna has given all these rules according to which society has to function. This is how social structure has to be designed. Of course, then there is also our eternal dharma, which is to worship the Supreme Lord, which is to do bhakti. So Krishna is saying whenever there is a decline in religious practice, be it Varnashrama dharma, bhakti, Krishna has to rectify the situation for the creation to continue. Now, Krishna has various ways to do that. Sometimes he himself descends. Sometimes his representatives descend. Sometimes he empowers jiva to carry out his work, etc., etc. But he's saying that when such principles are the laws of Lord, and only the Lord can manufacture system of religion. Unfortunately, in Kali Yuga, or not necessarily in Kali Yuga, even just before, in Kali Yuga only, all these so-called religions, right? Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, etc., etc. All these came into vogue in the last 3,000 years. Right now, all of these are man-made. Man-made in the sense that they are not actually completely Vedic. There are like tons of deviations in whatever is being practiced. Of course, then Islam and Christianity are not necessarily considered part of Vedas. It's a complete human created. So man cannot manufacture a system of religion. Even in India, like so many practices. And people say it's traditional in our house, we are doing it. But, most of these are not from Shastra. They're just like somebody just created one day, decided saying that, okay, we'll practice this. And they started practicing and then it became like parampara in family. Years after years, people are following that without any understanding whether it is required, not required, what is the intent, no understanding. Man-made religion. So religion cannot be made by God because they are laws. Religion are rules. The Vedas are also accepted as originally spoken by the Lord himself to Brahma from within his heart. Tene Brahmarada Adikave Muhyanti Yat Suraya. Srimad Bhagavatam, first verse, says that this whole Vedic knowledge was spoken by Krishna or Vishnu through the heart of Brahma. Tene Brahma Hrida. Hrida means heart. So these Vedas are created by the Lord. They are eternally present. And the Lord hands it over to the first person in his parampara. And of course, for the creation, he also hands over that to Brahma because Brahma is a secondary creator. And then Brahma gives it to his son Narada, and then it goes to Vyasadeva, and so on. The parampara of Vedic knowledge. Now, this Vedic knowledge also cannot be created by anybody. Okay, now I'm going to show you one chart. Coincidentally, there's this question about Vedas. So I'm going to show this chart. Okay. So this is Vedic knowledge for those who are very interested. If you want, you can take a photograph. Okay, so in Vedic knowledge, there are two parts. There is Shruti and there is Smriti. Shruti is actually Apaurusheya. Apaurusheya means no human being has given this. This is revealed, which means that it is existed. Lord reveals it to some qualified people, right? That's it. It's there throughout, right? So in Vedas, there are 4 parts. Okay. So I was a bit confused about Upanishads, whether they're outside, inside. So they're inside as part of the Vedas. So Vedas are Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva. Now, before Vyasadeva split, initially the Vedas were only one. It was Yajur Veda. Then it got split into Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva. And every Veda has 4 parts: Samhitas, Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and Upanishads. Visible, I think, right? Right. So the Samhitas are like, for example, there's Brahma Samhita, there is Manu Samhita, various mantras, and this one. Brahmanas are ritual explanation of the mantras. And Aranyakas are esoteric explanation of the mantras. Now, I don't know about a lot of details about all this. And then there's Upanishads. Now, the Upanishads actually deal with Gnana, actual Gnana, which is spiritual knowledge, philosophy of Brahman. So in every Veda, this Upanishad is available, and all these 4 are available in Vedas. And Vedas are Shruti. Then there is Upaveda, like Dhanurveda, Ayurveda. And that is why Ayurveda is considered authentic, because it is come down in Shastra. Then there is Vedangas. There are a lot of this like Jyotisha, Nirukta, etymology, Vyakarana, all of these, they come under Vedangas. Now this is Shruti. Shruti is one part. Then there is Smriti. Smriti is composed by sages. Here they're saying wording may change from age to age. It's not like exactly this. Veda cannot change. Vedas don't change. Smriti, there can be some changes. Then there are in Smriti so many types. There's ritual sutras, then there are tantras. Tantras spoken by Lord Shiva to Parvati, then this has Tamasic, Rajasic, Sattvic. Then there are Pancharatras, which are basically for Vaishnava worship. Then there are Puranas, 18 major, 18 minor. Then there are Ithiyasas, Ramayana, Mahabharata. Then there is what is called a Shad Darshana, 6 darshanas, which are 6 lines of philosophy which have been given. Vyasadeva gave Vedanta, Jaimini gave Mimamsa, Gautama gave Nyaya, Kannada gave Vaisheshika, Patanjali gave Yoga, and atheistic Kapila gave Sankhya. So all of this is together called Vedic knowledge. Now all of this is actually given by the Supreme Lord. No human being can give it. Even here, when it is composed by sages, it is an explanation or expansion of what is already given by the Lord. It's not something new, right? And also these are all like very empowered sages who are not just human beings with 4 defects, right? So they are perfected human beings, perfected jivas, and they come and give this. And there are only qualified people who can come and give this. Of course, in the Smriti, for example, some of these, like, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, they're all like wrong philosophies also, but that is also given. Because there are people who want to be misled, they are misled by whatever is given by these sages. So technically, none of these have been found or written in recent times. These are all like ancient. So all of this together is called Vedic knowledge. Okay, so this Vedic knowledge is, here Krishna is saying, Prabhupada is saying, this Veda is given by Vedescha ahameva vedyo vedanta krit veda videva chaham. Ahameva vedyo vedanta krit. I am the Vedanta krit. I am the creator of this Veda and Vedanta and all this. And I am to be known by all this Vedic knowledge, so much of knowledge, billions and trillions of verses. What is the goal of all this knowledge? To know Krishna. But he has given it in such a way that it is not very, very straightforward. See, Bhagavad Gita, which comes under Itihasa, is also called Panchama Veda because technically, though it is in Mahabharata, it is actually given by the Supreme Lord himself. And it has the summary of all of this, which is absolutely required. Only that knowledge is there in Bhagavad Gita. So if you read Bhagavad Gita, technically, we have understood the essence of all Vedic knowledge. We don't have to read all this. We just read Gita. So Gita is sometimes called, it is called Gita Upanishad, it is called Panchama Veda, it has like Mahabharata is called Panchama Veda, Bhagavad Gita is called Gita Upanishad. So though under Itihasa, which is Smriti, it also kind of comes under Shruti. So only the Lord can manufacture this or give this. And he spoke these in a nutshell in summary form, which is called Chatushloki Bhagavata. He spoke this to Brahma before the creation. So Brahma did not create whimsically. Brahma was overwhelmed. He was bewildered. He was saying, like, how should I create? I don't seem to know anything. He just opens his eyes and then he sees he's on some lotus flower and there's like complete pitch darkness. And he's wondering, like, who am I? I mean, what am I supposed to do? Why am I sitting here alone? And then the most intelligent being Brahma. So then he goes down the stem of his lotus flower, going searching, saying that, okay, this stem should have originated from some place. Now let me go and find that root. And then he goes into the waters. And he swims and swims and swims, and no, he's not able to find anything. Though he comes very close to the origin, which is the navel of Garbhodakashai Vishnu, he is not able to see anything because the Lord has not yet revealed anything to him, because he was not qualified yet. So then he comes back again, he sits on the top of the lotus, and then he hears two words saying tapa, tapa. So he hears these two words, which mean austerities, do austerities. So then Brahma engages in austerities for many hundreds of years. When he achieves perfection in those austerities, the Lord is pleased. Vishnu is pleased. Vishnu reveals himself to Brahma. Brahma sees Vishnu, sees the spiritual abode Vaikuntha. In fact, Vishnu shakes hands with Brahma. So Brahma becomes qualified after that tapas, after that tapascharya. To get a vision of Vishnu, to get the Vedas from Vishnu. And then he presents Brahma Samhita, which is something that we quote very often. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Chintamani Prakarasatma Sukalpa Vriksha Laksha Vruteshu Surabira Vipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Sata Sambrama Sevyamanam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So Brahma, after his realization, he tells who is this Vishnu, who is Krishna, what is this creation. Summary of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam is there in Brahma Samhita. So we should read Brahma Samhita, which we will plan to read after we finish Bhagavad Gita. So this whole, all of this dharma, religion, they are the direct orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The purpose of the Vedas is to establish such principles under the order of the Supreme Lord. And the Lord directly orders at the end of the Gita that the highest principle of religion is to surrender unto him only and nothing more. Like I said, the conclusion of all this Shastra, of all this Vedas is surrender unto Krishna, become Krishna's devotee. No, we keep discussing this surrender every now and then. I mean, by the time we end Bhagavad Gita, you would have heard this discussion about surrender many times. Because this is actually the most critical part. See, Bhagavad Gita has two parts, basically, right? One, there is Gnana, which is knowledge, and then there is Vijnana. Vijnana means applied knowledge. One is theoretical knowledge, the other is applied knowledge. So in college, we went to theory classes, we got the theory, then we went to the lab and we did practicals. So this practical is very important. If we just know this knowledge and keep it in our mind, head, not apply it, then it is useless. Then we are not going to realize. We are not going to achieve self-realization, as people call it. So this whole practical aspect of application is guided by this verse which describes Sharanagati. So only by surrender do we actually apply these principles of Bhagavad Gita. If we don't surrender, then we don't completely, perfectly apply the principles of instructions of Bhagavad Gita. So this is actually a framework for decision making. I would have repeated, like I said, these words multiple times. The idea is to actually take decisions in our life based on this principle of surrender. So in Hari Bhakti Vilas, this surrender is described as 6 aspects. Anukulyasya sankalpaha, pratikulyasya varjanam, rakshishati vishwaso, goptritve varnam tata, atma nikshepa, karpanya, shadvida sharanagati. So there are 6 items. First is anukulyasya sankalpaha, which means that whatever is anukula, whatever is favorable to bhakti, we should only do those things, including our work, our wanting to earn money, etc. All that should be Anukulyasya Sankalpa. It should be favorable to bhakti. In fact, Bhagavatam says that if somebody is engaged in an occupation which doesn't allow him to develop attraction to the message of Krishna, which is Bhagavad Gita Bhagavatam, then it is actually doing disservice. That occupation should be given up. So Anukulyasya Sankalpa, then Pratikulyasya Varjanam. Whatever is not favorable to bhakti should be given up. Many times, especially in the so important, so famous computer software industry, people have to work for 14 hours, 16 hours. I mean, I've done this in my life before. I know what it is. Literally, we've sold ourselves. We are worse than slaves. Previously, whatever people used to call slaves, those slaves actually used to be very nicely taken care by their masters. But here they just throw money at us and then say, just work, you slave. And we say, yes, sir. And we are working and working and working and working and working. No time for bhakti, no time for anything meaningful in life, just slog, slog, slog. So this is saying Pratikulyasya Varjanam. If suppose say your occupation is just giving you money, in Christianity they say, oh, what is that? I don't know if Ashwin is here, he'll know. Yeah, I don't know if ABC is Ashwin. What profiteth if thou lost their soul or something like that? Like, which basically means that if you engage in activities such that you just kill your soul, which means that you just don't engage in the activities of the soul, then what is the use of all that profit, of all that money that one is earning? So such occupation, such work has to be given up. Pratikulyasya Varjanam. Then when we are doing this Pratikulyasya Varjanam, we'll be worried, oh my God, I'm taking such a drastic decision. What will happen? Who will take care of our requirements? Then this third section of Sharanagati says, Rakshishyati iti Vishwasa. Have faith that Krishna will protect. And Goptritve Varnam Tata. You are not the maintainer. Krishna is the maintainer. Goptritve Varnam Tata. Then Atma Nikshepa. Then we just put ourselves at the lotus feet of the Lord in all situations in life and say, Krishna, you are my master. I am not the head of the family. I am not the owner of the house. I am just your servant. You have posted me in this place, in this house, amongst these people, and I have some responsibility to do, which I am doing to the best of my ability. That's it. I'm your servant. So which means the what? Servant, whatever money he earns, comes and gives it to Krishna, gives it to the master. So our money should be utilized just for maintaining Krishna's family, house. And Krishna's family, nobody in Krishna's family does sense gratification. So there's no question of sense gratification. Just, you have to eat nicely, healthy food, be healthy, try to be healthy. Then yes, decent clothing, decent place to shelter to stay. That's it. All our energy has to go in the service of Krishna. Rest of the energy, whatever is available. And Karpanya. Finally, it is humility. And without humility, we cannot surrender to Krishna. Which means what? Humility means we know that I am nobody. I am just servant of Krishna. I surrender to Krishna. So if I think I am somebody big, how will I surrender? I will have a fat, false ego, which will prevent me from surrendering to Krishna. So this surrender is the most important thing for all of us. And this is the highest principle of religion. It's being said it is the highest principle of religion. The Vedic principle push one towards complete surrender unto him. And whenever such principles are disturbed by the demoniac, the Lord appears. So if we don't surrender to Krishna, we might not have that, fancy looking horns and looking ugly, cruel, crazy, but we are demoniac. So there are two classes. There is Devata and there is Asura. Devata they follow what the Lord says. Asuras, they go opposite to what Lord says. So when such principles become too much, then the Lord appears. From the Bhagavatam, we understand that Lord Buddha is the incarnation of Krishna who appeared when materialism was rampant. And materialists were using the pretext of the authority of the Vedas. Although there are certain restrictive rules and regulations regarding animal sacrifice for particular purposes in the Vedas, people of demoniac tendency still took to animal sacrifice without reference to Vedic principles. Lord Buddha appeared in order to stop this nonsense and to establish the Vedic principles of non-violence. So Buddha appeared to, so this ahimsa is one of the Vedic principles, which was completely misused, as in the Vedas, Vedic principles were misused by people for meat eating. There are restrictions for meat eating in the Vedas, and even for those who have to eat, who are the lowest of humankind, they're allowed to eat, but very restrictive way, right? Like once in a month, something like that, to be offered in sacrifice in front of Durga Devi. So many processes are there. Not go to the shop, get it, and just cook and eat. And somebody asks, they say, no, I didn't kill the animal. You didn't kill the animal? Why are they killing if you are not eating? Because you are eating, they are killing. So people get the karma phala of that. So Buddha had to appear because it had become rampant. There were hardly any vegetarians. So he had to come and stop it. And he said, he just decried the Vedas. He said, Vedas don't exist. Right? And then he just said, Ahimsa paramo dharma. Ahimsa paramo dharma. Ahimsa is the supreme dharma. So just follow ahimsa. So like this, Prabhupada is saying, therefore, each and every avatar or incarnation of the Lord has a particular mission. And they're all described in the revealed scriptures. So they're described in the revealed scriptures. Like Bhagavatam even foretells Kalki avatar, which has not yet happened. All this is given in the Shastra. But nowadays in Kali Yuga, there is a fashion. People want to call themselves God. They will do some magic and they say, I am God. Or even if they don't say, their followers say, oh, this Swamiji is God. And he doesn't say anything to say, no, I am not God. I am servant of God. So Prabhupada, many times when, once actually a serious issue happened and one of his disciples was talking like this, saying that Prabhupada is so powerful, he's God and this and that and all that. Prabhupada just threw him out of ISKCON. He said, don't come back. This is not correct. I am not God. I am servant of God. You're going to spoil the whole mission. You just sent him out. Because Prabhupada was very, very clear that his real position is that he's servant of Lord. But there are so many other people who want to cheat. There are people who want to be cheated. So in the name of so-called spirituality, philosophy, this, that, and all that, they get cheated. Anyway, no one should be accepted as an avatar unless he's referred to by scriptures. It is not a fact that the Lord appears only on Indian soil. He can manifest himself anywhere and everywhere. And whenever he decides to appear, each and every incarnation, he speaks as much about religion. This is also very important, as can be understood by the particular people under their particular circumstances. So in other religions, for example, in Islam and Christianity also, it was propagated by the, like Jesus Christ is considered Son of God. But he didn't give the complete truth. Because people could only accept only so much. Because even also after Buddha, Shankaracharya came. He was incarnation of Shiva. He also came to give only some part of the Shastra. Ramanuja came and he gave little more. Madhvacharya came, he gave little more. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu he gave everything. That is why I was saying, like, we are so fortunate that we have come at this stage to get the topmost knowledge. He speaks as much about religion as can be understood by the particular people under their particular circumstances. But the mission is the same, to lead people to God consciousness. Whole idea of all religion should be this, to take people towards Krishna and obedience to the principles of religion. Sometimes he descends personally, and sometimes he sends his bona fide representative in the form of his son or servant or himself in some disguised form. The principles of the Bhagavad Gita were spoken to Arjuna and for that matter to other highly elevated persons because he was highly advanced compared to ordinary persons in other parts of the world. 2 plus 2 equals 4 is a mathematical principle that is true in the beginner's arithmetic class and in the advanced class as well. Still, there are higher and lower mathematics. In all incarnations of the Lord, therefore, the same principles are taught, but they appear to be higher or lower in varied circumstances. The higher principles of religion begin with acceptance of the 4 orders of the 4 statuses of social life, which we discussed, which is Varnashrama. The whole purpose of the mission of the incarnations is to arouse Krishna consciousness everywhere. Such consciousness is manifest and non-manifest only under different circumstances. So this Krishna consciousness is already there in all of us. Every jiva is Krishna conscious. Okay, but the only thing is it manifests or non-manifests at under certain circumstances, under different circumstances. So this is the whole reason why the Lord appears. The Lord appears because when there is decline in religious practice, he appears and to establish dharma. Okay. So we will end this here, and next week, Krishna willing, we will go with the next 2 verses are beautiful. 9th verse is one of my favorites. It's amazing. Actually, even 10th. Yeah. So 8, 9, 10th are like just amazing. Please don't miss. Let others also know. This is actually the, heart of, this is knowledge of Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, right? So it's beautiful. Okay. So I stop here. Anybody has any questions, thoughts, comments? Hare Krishna. Stop the recording.